our catering strategy and work with local businesses. So I think, COP26 really provides an excellent platform to showcase the best of Glasgow, the best of Scotland on that world stage. And, I'd just say that it's an event of huge scale, nearly 200 countries. We're expecting some very, very senior participation. So I've got no doubt that it's really going to put Glasgow on the map. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. So the short version is we chose Glasgow because we're Gallus. Susan, Roz started to touch there on some of the impact on and opportunities for business, but I think people will want to know what the opportunities are, and some of that will become clearer over time. But if you could touch a little bit on what the council is doing to make sure that there are opportunities and that there is a legacy for business in the city.
Yeah, so that's a big focus of our work just now, is making sure that we don't miss this opportunity of being front and centre on the world stage with, as Roz said, a reputation that is growing across the world for being a leader in sustainability, a city that's prepared to step up and lead the way in tackling the climate challenge. So we're focusing on a number of areas for businesses and an investment in the city. We're looking both at opportunities for inward investment, and a lot of that inward investment is on issues that businesses in the city have wanted to see for a long time, have wanted to see improvement and development on for a long time. So transport connectivity, for example, is a big part of that. And our Invest Glasgow team, who many of you may well be aware of, they're one of the best inward investment teams in any local authority in the UK, award-winning. They're working just now on a green investment portfolio to attract foreign direct investment into the city to help us undertake some of the really massive and substantial interventions that we're going to have to do in the city in order to be net zero by 2030. But we've also got a very clear eye on trying to identify and disseminate opportunities for indigenous business growth, if you like, and within that sustainability context. And we know that there are a number of key tools that local Glasgow and Glasgow region-based businesses can use to really capture the opportunities that Glasgow, being the sustainable leader, world leader, will bring for us. Digital tools are absolutely massive part of that, and that's a big focus for us. But a whole number of other areas where we're looking to support local businesses to identify how they can be part of this transition to net zero, which is going to happen very rapidly over the next decade, and we want to make sure that people are part of that. The most important thing is that, as we've already alluded to, and as Stuart mentioned in his video, COP's giving us a platform that no other city has. Like, cities all over the world are taking part in this transition. Businesses and cities all over the world are taking part in this transition, understanding it's inevitable. But COP26 gives Glasgow a platform and an opportunity. It does absolutely make us the envy of our peers and colleagues that I've been working with, like Mayor Andy Burnham, for example, in Greater Manchester, have not hidden that. They've been pretty open with me about saying, damn, how did you get that? Why don't we have it? And it's, I had to say the same as Colin said, because, we're more Gallus, basically. It's Glasgow stood out. We're the place that's got it. We're the place that's going to deliver. But we're absolutely determined. This is a generational opportunity for Glasgow businesses, and for Glasgow communities. And we're as much focused on the impact and the outcomes for communities in this as well. You're muted, Colin.
Things not working. The technology has failed me. Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted there. Thank you very much, Susan. Bernie, we're starting to get questions through for you, which I'm just trying to group together. There's one from somebody who's not named, but a similar one from James Conway, when will we know the size and scale of the event? Well, I think that will be a little bit down the line once the government complete their stock take. But Bernie, what protester activity and disruption do you anticipate, and what security measures, including policing assets, are you going to have in place to deal with public disorder and protest or activism?
Thanks, Colin. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we can safely say there will be lots of protest. It will be probably significant, but not all protest is bad. And part of my policing plan is to facilitate peaceful protest, because ultimately people have the right to assemble and they have the right to freedom of speech. Where it becomes a more direct police operation is when the protest starts to impact on the conference, or alternatively significantly impact on the workings of the city or other parts of the country. So we start from the position of friendly engagement and trying to facilitate the protest until such times, as I said, it reaches a tipping point where we have to take more direct action. In terms of the type of protest, we have seen, we anticipate Children's Day during the first week, where children from all across the country will come and lobby on behalf of environmental issues. There are a number of environmental groups which were more akin to taking direct action, so potentially they might try and lock themselves on to key areas within the city, or have what they call mass lie-downs or lie-ins. And again, at the time we'll assess what the impact that has, and if 100 people want to lie down in the middle of George Square on a cold, wet November afternoon, and it's not actually having any impact on the city, then they can lie there all day as far as I'm concerned, because my job is not to stop protest. Protest is why we're in a democratic society. And in terms of the wider police operation, clearly we'll have lots of specialist assets. What I would say is, without question, it will be the biggest mobilisation of police assets across the UK that's ever been seen, and include events such as the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics in that statement. I am bringing in mutual aid officers from England and Wales and Northern Ireland to support the delivery of this safe and secure event. And it will be every specialism that you can consider, whether that be conventional police officers, public order officers, firearms officers, road policing officers, mounted officers, dog officers, the whole wide range of asset. Operationally, I wouldn't be comfortable disclosing the actual numbers, because that is operationally sensitive. But suffice to say, it is the largest scale operation that I've ever been involved in. And just to keep the team running, Police Scotland has got a really enviable reputation for delivering large-scale events. I wouldn't necessarily describe us as gallus, Susan, but we are certainly confident in our ability without being complacent around it. And ultimately, it's public safety that will come first in any decision that I make.
The biggest event he's ever policed is a big claim for a man who was once the match commander at Cowdenbeath versus Raith Rovers. So that gives you some indication of the scale of the thing. I'm just looking to Stuart. Stuart, we're getting a load of questions in that I think are probably good for you, which we'll come back to. But let's start with Nicola Taylor has asked us a question about the extent of rolling out training for businesses and citizens during the event to help them get across the city's image as a really, really friendly place. Is that something that we should be looking at, do you think?
Absolutely. I know Nicola well, and she knows her stuff. She's certainly a very prominent member of the hoteliers industry in the city, and she knows exactly what will make a good experience for visitors coming to Glasgow. So she's absolutely right. It is something we should be planning. We have quite a lot of plans developing. I won't deny that so much of it has hinged on what that COVID review finally says about the extent to which we can do face-to-face activity. But we're very, very keen to make sure that not only that visitors get a really good experience of Glasgow, but that local businesses and local people get a really good experience of COP, and that they get, particularly in the business community, that they get a real chance to demonstrate their credibility, their credentials in tackling climate change. We want them to be able to show to the world just what businesses in Glasgow are able to do. And I'm particularly keen that the most important visitors that might be able to help that might help our Glasgow businesses succeed, some of those corporate chief execs and chair people coming into Glasgow, that we get a chance to meet them and sell ourselves as an economic city to those players. So I'm sure Roz will work with us on identifying who's coming in and when they're coming in and how they can meet the host city and how they can meet the business community. So actually being able to demonstrate that Glasgow is a really good place for investment in the way that Susan explained earlier, just what the opportunities for investment are, both as inward investors but equally in trading with local businesses. That's the kind of visits that we are going to put at the top of our list. But I think Nicola's absolutely right. If there's an opportunity to repeat some of the well-worn programmes of activity in Commonwealth Games and European Championships, we absolutely should.
Good stuff. Stuart, listen, I'm going to stay with you just now because there's a bunch of questions coming in that I think probably, if you start off with, and maybe bring Susan in. So there was one here, let me just find it, from Angela Campbell, who's saying, my office has been able to work from home over the last year. Would you recommend that we do so again over the conference dates? We're based at Charing Cross, we're near Scottish Power. We've already decided not to host visitors to the site over that period. And there's a couple of questions that are in a similar vein about how people work. Catherine Whitelaw's got a similar question. And I think that this goes back to the conversation that you and I first had around about the time of the London Olympics and going into the Commonwealth Games about an aspiration to keep the city moving and open for business. So what would you say to Angela, who says, should we just all take 2 weeks off?
I'd rather she didn't, but I'm obviously going to be swayed by what Bernie says as we get closer to the event. I'd rather she didn't stay at home for the 2 weeks, because we've got a city centre that's desperate for her daily business. We've seen just how impactful it can be when nobody comes to the city centre either for the legal reasons that we are all now familiar with, or because they're making choices not to come. We would rather like to get to the point where the city centre operates as much as is feasible. I suspect the bigger challenges rest with those businesses nearer to the conference venue itself, and I think that's where we've really got to lay out in detail. In practice, it may be the case, but if you're right next to the conference centre, that you're going to really struggle to operate normally through the 2 weeks, and that might be the choice for the city centre. I think we prefer to get to the point, as we did with the Commonwealth Games, that on the whole, you are able to come into the city centre, except for perhaps those days when something really substantial has been planned. But of course, as Bernie has said, you just can't sure what will come. But our aspiration would be to try and keep the city centre operating, not least because first 2 weeks in November, that's a critical part of the pre-Christmas run-up for retail, hospitality and the hotel business.
Yeah. So I think, I would just quickly say that there was a consensus really that big events shut down city centres, and that the way you secured success for athletes or delegates or whatever they are was you clear people off of the streets. And I think Stuart was very, very clear in the run-up to 2014 that shouldn't be our ambition. And I think we've, without sounding excessively arrogant about it, I think we've kind of changed that model a little bit now, whereby your transport consultants now understand that the brief is not to make the event work. The brief is to make the event work and allow the city to continue to operate. Susan, have you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I see no reason why the event and the city and the city centre specifically can't coexist. Now, it won't necessarily be that there will be no impact. And in actual fact, we'd like there to be impact, because one of the reasons Glasgow does big events so well is precisely because delegates, visitors come and they take part in the life of the city, and they go away with that really strong sense of Glasgow and the spirit of Glasgow. And it is that spirit that is that kind of ineffable, intangible ingredient that makes events so enjoyable for people. Now, because of COVID, we don't yet know, as Roz indicated, we don't have all the answers yet as to exactly how much delegates in the city will be able to interact with each other. But certainly, I believe that that ambition that Glasgow continues and demonstrates to the world coming to the city just who we are as a city. If no one's there, we're not going to be able to demonstrate that. So I think it's actually really important that we coexist. And there's also some brilliant things that businesses in the city will be able to benefit from. The plans that are in place that are underway just now for the transformation of the Brummelaw, for example, the route, the active travel route along to the venue at the SEC, for the activation of spaces under the Kingston Bridge, for a transformation roundabout Anderston Station, for example. People who are in that part of the city particularly will see real benefits and will, things that they'll be able to enjoy during that period and indeed enjoy afterwards as well. Certainly there will have to be, and Bernie indicated this, and there'll be more detail about all of this coming forward, there will have to be parts of the city that won't be as accessible as usual or indeed accessible at all because of the levels of security that are going to be required. But we will minimise that. From the security plans that I've seen so far, and they're not finalised, they are not light touch because it's got to be very, very serious security, but it isn't over the top. It isn't about, spreading out and shutting the city down. Actually, quite the opposite. And as those plans emerge, I think that people will be able to see that they'll be able to continue, perhaps with some adjustment for that period, but they will be able to continue going about their lives and their business within the city for the period of the event.
Thanks, Susan. I've got a couple of questions here, which I'm going to start off, Susan, with you and then hand over to Roz. So just a question from Nicoletta. Primo, will the city be hosting youth events for young people to get involved? How do young people get involved? And I'm just scrolling back up through the chat because I think the very first question we had, was about young people getting involved. That was also Nicoletta. Nicoletta. So, Susan, how do we want to engage with young people in the city in the run-up to the event? And then I'll come to Roz to talk about engaging young people across the country.
Yes, in short, the answer is yes, and we've got plans in place just now you may have read about the Citizens' Assembly that we're planning. We want to do specifically a children and young people's Citizens' Assembly as well, for them to engage directly, not just with COP26, but with the whole issues of addressing the climate emergency, which will shape their lives as much as, possibly more than any of the rest of us. There's the partnership with Italy, who are hosting the Youth COP as well, and we're having early discussions with our city counterparts there about having some partnerships. Our schools are going to be incredibly important, and I know that our education department are looking at the opportunities and how they can really embed this in the school curriculum and in the activities. And there's already a huge amount goes on in our schools around the climate issues anyway. I'm sure everybody knows at the very least of Sunnyside Primary and their fantastic campaigns on single-use plastics, for example, which have genuinely influenced City Council policy on these issues. So we've got brilliant work to build on, but yeah, we want to have absolutely a real focus on young people. But as well as what we are planning in the city, I think it's important to remember there's so many organisations who want to be part of this, whether in person or digitally, and children and young people are going to be a big focus for a lot of them. So I think even above and beyond our own events, there will be lots of opportunities for young folk in Glasgow to engage with this, to be part of it. And we're also looking at actual community-based events as well, using our Artist in Residence programme, which we've had in place for a couple of years, has maybe been a little bit less active during the pandemic for obvious reasons, but a brilliant reason to mobilise that and get our communities directly engaged through creativity in the events and in the issues surrounding it.
Thanks, Susan. And Ros, how is the country as a whole looking at getting young people involved?
Thanks. Just kind of building on what Susan says, obviously we've got the Youth COP in Italy. I think inclusion is at the heart of COP26 and what we as UK presidency want to do. That youth voice is extremely important, and we're very aware of the kind of the energy, the engagement, and the influence that young people can bring to bear on this, and that's a really important part of COP. So we're engaging through our Together for Our Planet campaign, which is the campaign in the run-up to COP, with all sections of society, and certainly with youth as part of that. We ran an art competition for young people to design artwork that will be displayed at COP. We're looking at other activations across the year. At COP itself, we will be hosting a green zone, which is fully open to the public. So that will be hosted at the Glasgow Science Centre, so just across from the SEC. And we're very much hoping that young people will be able to, will kind of come along to that. It will be free to kind of enter that, be able to apply for tickets, and very much hoping that young people will be able to come participate in the green zone and have their voice heard. Thanks.
Thanks, Ros. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, so we've not got a huge amount of time. Bernie, I'm not gonna try and tell us who's asked these questions, because we've got a bunch of questions about, well, look, this is going to be really big, you're going to do a great job, but life is going to go on elsewhere. So how do we continue to provide a policing service to people who are not engaged in COP?
Okay, thanks, Colin. So, firstly, can I just echo the comments of Councillor Aitken? Part of the policing operation is very much based on trying to keep the city moving. And whilst there are going to be road closures, we are going to put in place a traffic management plan which will hopefully minimise the impact of the road closure as much as we possibly can. But we really do want to see the businesses still, get the benefit of the thousands of people that will descend upon the city. In terms of business as usual, it's a really simple equation. When I'm working out how many officers I'm going to request on a mutual aid basis, I start from the premise of what do I need to leave to do with all the business as usual, and then the surplus after. So, for example, say I need 50 firearms officers, and these are just figures that I'm quoting. Say I need 50 firearms officers, but to deliver business as usual, every day we need 25 firearms officers. So I can only take the other 25 and use them for COP26. So to make up to the 50, I then go to mutual aid and ask for the additional 25 firearms officers. So that's how it's calculated. So we've calculated what do I need to leave to deliver business as usual, not just in Glasgow, but right across Scotland. And where the shortfall is in terms of my operation, that's when I go to colleagues in England and Wales and ask for that additionality. You also must remember that we're doing things like cancelling annual leave, limiting the rest days that people can work, and looking at the shifts that people will be working as well. So there'll be a lot of 12-hour working. There will be pinch points. We are speaking with the football authorities to make sure that there are no really big games in Glasgow and some of the other cities. We really don't want an Old Firm game in the middle of COP26. We're speaking to UEFA to see if any European games can be played away from home, because the reality is there's not a hotel room to be had in Glasgow. So any visiting team, there would be nowhere for their fans to go. In fact, there would be nowhere for the team to stay actually in Glasgow now, because all the hotel rooms are snapped up. But to give people the assurance, business as usual delivery is as much as a key priority for Police Scotland and the Chief Constable as is the safe and secure delivery of the COP event.
Thanks, Bernie. And one other question, somebody that Robert Haley is asking, his business is right across from the venue. Are we able to visit these hyper-local businesses to give them advice on what they should be doing during the event?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got security advisors that have already engaged with a number of business premises. We're quite happy to come out and speak to anybody, give them some advice. Right away, we're already doing it, so happily we'll do that. And we're just looking at the questions online as well. So we'll put out a contact number for anybody that wants to come and seek our specific security advice from us. Happy to do so.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernie. Okay, I think I'm going to draw the questions to a close at this point. There are a whole load of questions in there about specific questions about road closures. So we know quite a lot of that already, and we put out some detail on that last week. I think probably the simplest way to get that is to follow Get Ready Glasgow on Twitter, which is @GetReadyGlasgow, and there's links there to the website which has the various bits of information on it. I know everyone is not on Twitter, but for the run-up to COP, it would be great if you or your business could go on there and follow Get Ready Glasgow, because we will use that as one of our ways of getting information out to you. So if you go on there just now, you can find out about which roads are impacted at the moment, and if anything changes, because as Bernie says, we're not always going to know what's going to happen from day to day. If anything changes, we'll push that information out there. There was another question about road closures affecting just cars, or does it affect cars and pedestrians and bikes? Well, it will be a mix, and we'll try and get you some information on that. I apologise if we haven't managed to get to your specific question, because they're all really, really brilliant. Is there a plan to clean up litter and graffiti in the city prior to the event? Well, I would very much like us to not have to do that, and we're working to try and work with citizens to encourage them to take some responsibility for their local area. So I'm going to stop looking at the questions now, because the temptation to just start answering them is too great. This event will be available for you to look at afterwards. As I say, we'll get answers to all of the questions that have been asked. This is the first engagement we're going to have. For some of you, the engagement will be more of this kind of event. For some of you, it will literally be someone coming and chapping your door and talking to you about what the very immediate impact is going to be on you. For some of you, it will be your engagement with the Chamber of Commerce and the support that they can give you to take advantage of what's happening during the event. So that's the last you are going to hear from me today. Thank you very much for turning up, and thank you for your questions. I'm just going to hand over finally to the Leader of the Council, Susan Aitken, to say thank you to all of you.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. I think the turnout is fantastic. It really shows the level of interest that there is in this event, and rightly so, because I keep struggling not to use superlatives all the time, because I think I sound like a children's TV presenter or something, but it's very difficult not to, because this is unlike anything we have done before or will ever do again. The opportunity is spectacular. There will be a bit of disruption, there will be a bit of adjustment to our day-to-day lives during that period. We will try and minimise that as much as possible. But what I not just hope, I firmly believe, is that the opportunity and the benefits that we will get as a city from that relatively brief period of hopefully minimal disruption will outweigh that disruption by many times over. I really do think this is going to be a brilliant event, but we obviously want to do it along with you, in partnership with you, with our businesses and communities. That's what Get Ready Glasgow is about. We will get information as soon as it's available. We will get it out to you through the various routes that Colin just talked about. We know that you need to be kept up to date for you to function as much as you possibly can. We're very conscious of that, and we're very conscious that we have, as the host city, a responsibility towards our businesses, our residents, and the city as a whole, our own citizens, as well as the citizens of the world. So please be assured that we will be focusing on that just as much as we will on the outcome and the Glasgow Agreement, which hopefully will change the future for our planet. So thanks very much for coming along, and I hope and look forward to having more conversations with you like this as we get more information and more to share with you. Thank you. And thanks very much to Ros and Stuart and Bernie and Colin as well for coming along and taking part today.
Thanks, everyone.